Hey everybody, this is Eric with JMTC Performance, and today we're going to talk oil and the correct spec that you should be using. Now, I get a lot of calls from my customers, and I ask them, what spec of oil are you using? And they say, oh, it's Mobil 1, or oh, it's AMSOIL, or oh, it's Liquimoly, or oh, it's 5W30 or 10W30. Or they say, it's fully synthetic motor oil. Well, none of the terms I mentioned above are a spec. A spec of the oil is very critical on a turbocharged car, and it can lead to engine failure, high oil consumption, and turbocharger failure. So when an oil says fully synthetic, that is just a marketing term. Has nothing to do with the amount of synthetic oil used to make the oil, and it has nothing to do with the quality of the oil. The brand has nothing to do with the quality of the oil, and it has nothing to do with the spec of the oil. Recently, big box stores like Walmart, Costco, your auto parts stores, they call out the specs of the oil they want. So you can go to Costco and you can buy Mobil 1 fully synthetic oil, but if you look on the back at the spec, there's no specification that leads me to believe that any of the oil in that bottle is synthetics. They have an API specification, which you can see right here in this little circle. And API has been outdated since probably the 1950s. An API only requires, if it's an API only, it only requires that 1% of the oil be synthetic. So that means that you're getting conventional oil in your fully synthetic bottle. So the correct spec of oil for turbocharged car, you'll have to read your manual, but for example, like on Mini Coopers from 2002 to 2013 roughly, is ACEA A3B3. And that spec is right here. If you look right here, I picked this up specifically for the video. This is a specification for the early Mini Coopers and most European cars. Now, BMW does spec their own oil. They have LL1, LL2, and some other specifications. Japanese cars have Jasco. Ford has the Fomoco spec, and many other specs. It is very important that you read the manual and get the exact spec of the oil, and here's the reason why. Today's cars now run at higher temperatures, and they do this to increase the efficiency of the motor. Cars 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they would run at 180, 190 degrees. Well, the cars now, to increase the fuel efficiency of the car, they actually run about 210 to 220, maybe even 230. And if you don't have a real spec'd fully synthetic oil, you're actually vaporizing the oil in your engine as you drive. There's a couple manufacturers that say that on a turbocharged car, you can burn up to a quart of oil in 1,000 miles. Well, if you left that way, that can be a catastrophic end to your engine. You have to have the correct spec of oil that is spec'd for that car so it can run at the higher temperatures that engine demands. The Mini Coopers, for example, run at 210 to 230 degrees. The conventional oil burns or vaporizes at 200 degrees. Fully synthetic does too, but it has a lower evaporation rate, so it doesn't gel in your motor. The other reason you want to use the correct spec of oil is that the new motors use different type of gaskets than the older motors. So for instance, on Mini Coopers and BMWs, they're now using Viton seals. Well, if you don't have the right hydration fluid with the spec of this oil in your oil, what's going to happen is your Viton seal is going to dry out. It's going to shrink and allow exhaust to get into your engines around the guides. And when that happens, you start vaporizing oil in your engine, and that's where you get to the high oil consumption. So when you have high oil consumption, the exhaust is getting into your engine, and it's actually pressurizing your engine. And on a turbocharged car, when you have an engine pressure the oil no longer drains out the oil drain, and instead it drains into your exhaust and it drains into your intake. And when that happens, you also increase the demand of the catalytic converter, and the catalytic converter not only gets hotter, it also has has liquid oil to deal with, and it gets coked up. This leads to 3 problems. One, when the Cadillac starts coking up, you get pressure in the exhaust, and it exacerbates the problem because now the pressure in the engine can't go out the exhaust because the exhaust pressure is blowing into the engine. The oil will actually drain out the front of the turbocharger because the oil has no other place to go. And when you have oil in your draining out the front of your turbocharger, it actually pools up in the intercooler. And the next time you go into boost, you can suck up that oil and causing the motor to hydrolock. So not only do you have lower octane fuel in the form of oil, vaporized oil getting into your engine, causing knock, and on a turbocharged engine, knock is one of the most deadly things you can do to an engine. You also have the chance of getting liquid motor oil in your engine, and you're also you also have the incorrect AFRs, so you can cause knock. So you've got 3 deadly things: incorrect AFRs, knock, and hydrolock. That will kill an engine for sure. If the car does manage to last, because they do, they design the cars now to withstand a lot of force. Now, the pistons are beefed up and everything. But if the car does run okay while this is going on, you may be damaging the turbocharger because the exhaust pressure will actually push the turbine assembly forward, causing it to wear out. Also, the air pressure that's going into the engine through the turbocharger actually blows the oil off of the turbines, and it can cause the thrust bearing to wear out and or the sleeve bearing in the turbocharger will wear out because there's no oil on it, and then it'll lock up and blow up the turbocharger. So if you have high oil consumption, you need to find out you're using the incorrect oil and switch back to the correct oil. If the problems don't go away, you're going to need to looking at one of the 3 things, or it could be all 3, because if you have one of those problems, they usually create the other 2. If you've got a clogged cat, you usually damage the turbo, and you can put pressure on the guide. If you've got a failed turbocharger, that when you let off the throttle, oil's coming out and it's clogging the cat, and then the cat will lead to the guide seals failing too. If you've got faulty guide seals from using the incorrect oil, you're going to be clogging the cat while you drive the car, and that's going to affect your turbocharger. Hey everybody, to fix most of the problems you have with guide seals, I usually recommend people use the liquid moly, because for some reason people that haven't been using the correct spec of oil, and then they switch to the liquid moly, it fixes their problem in about 60-70% of the time. In the cases that it doesn't, of course, they got to replace their guide seals. But I also found that liquid moly has is a great resource. Their website's a great resource to figure out the proper spec of oil for your car. When I looked up the R56 spec, it came up with the same spec as when I went to talk to the Mini dealer, which was an ACE A3 B3. And then when I looked up the F56 spec, which is the same as the BMW specs, it came up with a BMW LL17, I think it was, or ACEA A5 B5. So I would recommend using that oil when there is a problem. I would also recommend using their website to figure out the correct spec of oil. Hey everybody, hope you enjoyed this video and found it very informational. If you need more information, you can visit us on our YouTube channel at jmturbocoopers. You can visit us on our website at jmtcperformance.com. You can also email us at support@jmturbocoopers.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. We are on Facebook and Instagram. If you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to call. Happy motoring. much.